Have you ever wondered what your parents would say if they saw you working 16 hours a day in your room, surrounded by papers and code on your computer? They'd probably say the same thing this story's protagonist's parents said. You're a lazy failure who does nothing with your life. But what if I told you that this lazy failure was building something that would change his life forever? What if I told you that while everyone judged him for not having a real job, he was creating what would become a billion-dollar empire? The story you're about to hear today is about hasty judgments, about persisting when nobody believes in you, and about how a plot twist can be so powerful that it transforms the family disappointment into the man who buys his own father's company. But before we dive into this incredible journey, if you love real stories of overcoming obstacles that will leave you speechless, smash that like button to help me keep bringing you this content. And if you're not subscribed to the channel yet, hit that subscribe button, because every week I bring you stories that will inspire you and make you question everything you think about success and failure. Now. Get ready for a story that will make you rethink what it really means to do nothing with your life. It was an ordinary Tuesday in March when everything fell apart. The kind of day that starts quietly, but ends with words that can never be taken back, with doors slamming shut, and with a family's life changing forever. Marcus was 28 years old and ... to anyone looking from the outside, he was exactly what you'd picture when you think of an adult failure. While his college classmates were already established in solid careers, some as doctors earning 6 figures, others as lawyers in prestigious firms, some even married with children, Marcus was still sleeping until noon at his parents' house. But there was something nobody knew, something that not even his own parents could see behind that routine. That ... externally ... seemed like pure laziness. That Tuesday morning, while his father Robert was getting ready for another day running his logistics company, a business he had built from scratch over the past 30 years and that now moved millions annually, he walked past his son's room on his way to breakfast. And what he saw left him absolutely furious. It was 10:30 a.m., and Marcus was still sleeping. At least that's what it looked like. The room was dark. Curtains drawn, and Marcus was in bed with his laptop on his lap, surrounded by an impressive mess. Cold coffee cups scattered across the desk. Plates with food remnants, stacks of scribbled papers, Post-it notes stuck to the wall forming a pattern that only made sense in his mind, and at least 6 monitors displaying incomprehensible code. To Robert. This was definitive proof of his son's laziness. To Marcus's mother. Helen, who worked as a principal at a private school and had always maintained the perfect image of a successful family. This was a shame she had carried in silence for years. What they didn't know, and perhaps had never stopped to ask. Was that Marcus wasn't sleeping. He had spent the entire night working. In fact, he worked more hours per day than any of them, just on something they considered child's play. But that Tuesday was different. That Tuesday. Something inside Robert finally snapped. The tension had been building for months. Every family dinner had become a battlefield of passive-aggressive comments. Your cousin just got promoted to partner at his law firm. Double quotes, Helen would say, glancing meaningfully at Marcus. Mrs. Johnson's son just bought his second house, Robert would add, his voice dripping with disappointment. Marcus had learned to stay silent during these conversations. He had learned that trying to explain what he was working on only made things worse. The last time he tried to show them his project. His father had looked at the screen for exactly 30 seconds before saying, son. Playing with computers isn't a career. It's time to grow up. But that morning was the breaking point. Robert stood in the doorway, watching his son in what appeared to be the same position he'd been in for the past 3 years. And something inside him exploded. ENOUGH. The roar echoed through the house, causing Helen to drop her coffee mug in the kitchen downstairs. Marcus looked up, startled, his eyes bloodshot from staring at screens for the past 14 hours straight. But his father didn't see exhaustion from work. He saw the lazy stare of someone who had just woken up. Double quotes, Dad. I'm working. I can explain. Working? Robert's laugh was bitter. Cutting. Working? Son, I've been watching you for 3 years. 3 years. Do you know what I was doing when I was your age? I was working 80-hour weeks building something real. I was supporting a family. I was making something of myself. Helen appeared in the doorway. Her face pale. She had heard that tone in her husband's voice only once before. The day he fired his own brother from the company for embezzlement. Robert. Maybe we should talk about this calmly. No. Helen, no more talking. No more giving him time to find himself. No more excuses. Robert stepped into the room, his presence filling the space like a storm cloud. Look at this place. Look at him. 28 years old, living in our house. Eating our food. Using our electricity for his games. They're not games. Dad, if you would just listen. Listen? Robert's voice cracked with years of accumulated frustration. I've been listening for 3 years, and what do I hear? Excuses, dreams, fantasy projects that go nowhere. Do you know what your mother tells her friends when they ask about you? Do you know the shame you've brought to this family? The words hit Marcus like physical blows. He had always known his parents were disappointed, but hearing it spoken so brutally, so definitively, was different. Helen tried to intervene again. Robert. He's our son. He's a grown man, or he should be. Robert turned back to Marcus. His eyes cold with a finality that made the room feel smaller. I'm done. Marcus, I'm done enabling this. This pathetic existence. You have exactly 30 days to get a real job. And I mean a real job with a real salary. At a real COMPAN wire. You're out of this house. The silence that followed was deafening. Marcus felt his world tilting. The safety net he had taken for granted suddenly ripped away. Dad. Please, just give me a little more time. What I'm building. It's going to It's going to what? Make you rich? Change the world? Robert's sarcasm was cutting. I've heard this story 1,000 times. From every dreamer who thinks they're special. Who thinks they don't have to follow the same rules as everyone else. You know what happens to people like that? They end up living in their parents' basement until they're 40. Robert walked to the window and yanked open the curtains, flooding the room with harsh afternoon light. The mess looked even worse in the brightness. The scattered papers, the empty energy drink cans, the chaos of what looked like a madman's obsession. Look around you. Marcus, really look. This isn't the workspace of a future success story. This is the bedroom of a man-child who refuses to grow up. But there was something Robert didn't see. In that harsh light. Something he couldn't recognize because he had never looked closely enough. Those scattered papers weren't random scribbles. They were architectural diagrams for something unprecedented. Those lines of code on the monitors weren't games. They were the foundation of something that would revolutionize an entire industry. Those post-it notes weren't the ramblings of a dreamer. They were a roadmap to a future that nobody else could see yet. Marcus stood up slowly. His laptop sliding off his lap. For a moment, father and son faced each other across a chasm that seemed unbridgeable. You've never asked me what I'm actually working on. Marcus said quietly, because it doesn't matter. Robert replied with devastating certainty. Whatever it is. It's not paying the bills. It's not putting food on the table. It's not building a life. Helen stepped forward, her voice barely a whisper. Maybe if we ... No. Robert's decision was final. 30 days ... Marcus. 30 days to prove you can be a contributing member of society. Or you find somewhere else to live. I won't watch you waste away in this room any longer. As Robert walked toward the door, he turned back one final time. And Marcus, your mother and I, we love you. But love isn't enough anymore. You need to love yourself enough to build a real life. The door closed with a soft click, but the sound echoed like thunder. Marcus stood alone in his room, surrounded by 3 years of work that his parents saw as nothing more than an expensive hobby. In 30 days, he would have to choose. Abandon everything he had been building to take a job that would satisfy his parents' definition of success, or lose his family and his home to pursue something that might never work. What Marcus didn't know, what nobody in that house could have imagined, was that in exactly 30 days, his life would change in a way that would make this conversation seem like the greatest gift his father had ever given him. But that story, that's still to come. What happened in the 29 days that followed that devastating confrontation would become the most crucial period of Marcus's life. But to understand the magnitude of what was really at stake, we need to go back 3 years. Back to the moment when everything began. It was a rainy Thursday evening in September 2021 when Marcus first had the idea that would change everything. He had just been laid off from his 3rd job in 2 years, this time from a mid-level marketing position at a tech startup that folded when their funding dried up. He was sitting in his childhood bedroom, staring at his laptop screen, mindlessly scrolling through social media when he witnessed something that would haunt him for weeks. His grandmother, who lived alone in a small apartment across town, had fallen in her bathroom. She lay there for 6 hours before a neighbor happened to check on her. 6 hours of pain, fear, helplessness. When Marcus visited her in the hospital, she grabbed his hand with surprising strength and whispered, "I kept thinking, if only someone knew, if only someone could see." That night, Marcus couldn't sleep. He kept thinking about his grandmother's words, about those 6 hours, about the millions of elderly people who live alone, who face the same terrifying vulnerability every single day. And then, somewhere between 3 and 4 a.m. lightning struck. What if there was a way to know? What if technology could bridge that gap between vulnerability and help? Marcus spent the next week researching everything he could find about emergency response systems, health monitoring, AI pattern recognition, and elderly care technology. What he discovered was shocking. The existing solutions were either prohibitively expensive, invasively complex, or simply didn't work well enough to make a real difference. The current market was dominated by clunky medical alert pendants that required elderly users to remember to wear them and press a button when in distress. But what about people who couldn't reach the button? What about those who lost consciousness? What about the proud elderly who refused to wear emergency jewelry because it made them feel helpless? Marcus saw a gap in the market so obvious, so massive, that he couldn't understand why nobody had filled it yet. And that's when the idea crystallized into something concrete. He would create an invisible guardian angel. The concept was revolutionary. In its simplicity, a network of small, unobtrusive sensors placed throughout a home that would learn the daily patterns of the inhabitant. Using advanced AI and machine learning, the system would recognize normal behavior and immediately detect anomalies that could indicate a medical emergency, a fall, or any situation requiring immediate assistance. But here's where Marcus's vision went beyond anything that existed. Instead of just alerting emergency services, his system would create a comprehensive support network. It would instantly notify family members, neighbors, healthcare providers, and emergency responders simultaneously. providing them with real-time information about the situation, the person's medical history, and the fastest route to provide help. The technology would be completely passive, no buttons to press ... No devices to remember to wear. No complex interfaces for elderly users to navigate. It would simply exist in the background, watching over them like a caring family member who never slept. Marcus called it Guardian Protocol. For the first 6 months, he worked on it sporadically, treating it like a side project while he searched for another real job to appease his parents. But as the technology began to take shape, as he started seeing the potential impact it could have on millions of lives, Guardian Protocol consumed him completely. He spent his savings on development tools, sensors, and cloud computing resources. He taught himself advanced programming languages, studied medical emergency protocols, and dove deep into the psychology of aging and independence. He reached out to geriatricians, emergency responders, and elder care specialists, conducting hundreds of interviews to understand exactly what was needed. The breakthrough came 8 months into the project. Marcus had been struggling with the IS pattern recognition. How could a system learn to distinguish between someone taking an unusually long nap and someone who had fallen and couldn't get up? The solution came to him during one of his marathon coding sessions at 4 a.m. Instead of trying to detect emergencies directly, the system would create a comprehensive life signature for each user, a unique pattern of movement, routine, and behavior that was as individual as a fingerprint. Any deviation from this signature would trigger a graduated response system, starting with gentle check-ins and escalating to full emergency protocols if needed. By the end of year 1, Marcus had a working prototype that could accurately detect falls, medical events, and other emergencies with 97% accuracy, better than any existing system on the market. But he didn't just have a product. He had a vision for transforming how society cared for its most vulnerable members. The potential applications were staggering. Beyond elderly care, Guardian Protocol could monitor people with chronic conditions, individuals recovering from surgery, people living with disabilities, or anyone who lived alone and wanted an extra layer of security. The system could even detect early signs of cognitive decline, potentially identifying conditions like dementia months or years before traditional diagnosis methods. But perhaps most importantly, Guardian Protocol would allow people to age in place with dignity and independence, knowing that help was always just moments away if needed. By year 2, Marcus had built a fully functional system and began approaching investors. This is where the real nightmare began. Meeting after meeting, presentation after presentation, Marcus faced the same response. It's too ambitious. The market isn't ready. Elderly people don't adopt new technology. The liability issues are insurmountable. How do we know this isn't just another gadget that will end up in a drawer? One particularly brutal meeting with a prominent venture capital firm ended with the lead investor saying, "Son, you're trying to solve a problem that doesn't need solving. If people wanted this kind of monitoring, they'd already have it." But Marcus knew something these investors didn't. He had spoken to hundreds of elderly individuals, their families, and healthcare providers. The demand wasn't just there. It was desperate and growing every day as the population aged and more seniors chose to live independently. The problem wasn't lack of demand. It was that nobody had created a solution elegant enough, affordable enough, and effective enough to bridge the gap between need and adoption. So Marcus made a decision that would define the next phase of his life. He would bootstrap Guardian Protocol himself. No investors, no board members, no compromise on vision. He would build it exactly the way it needed to be built. Even if it took years. This decision coincided almost perfectly with his parents' growing frustration with his unemployment. What they saw as aimless tinkering in his bedroom was actually the most focused, intense work of his life. While they thought he was playing games or wasting time, Marcus was typically working 16 to 18-hour days, surviving on energy drinks and whatever food he could grab quickly from the kitchen. His daily routine became a masterclass in obsessive dedication. He would wake up around 10 a.m., having worked until 3 or 4 a.m. the night before, grab coffee and whatever leftovers he could find, and immediately dive into code. He worked through lunch through dinner often forgetting to eat entirely. His world had contracted to the space between his bed and his computer setup. But here's what made his parents' ultimatum so devastating. Marcus was closer to a breakthrough than anyone realized. In those final 30 days before his father's deadline. Marcus was putting the finishing touches on Guardian Protocol 3.0, a version that had solved every major technical challenge and was ready for beta testing. He had secretly arranged partnerships with 3 nursing homes and 2 senior living communities who were eager to test the system. He had lined up his first potential customers, developed a manufacturing plan, and even identified the key hire he needed to scale the business. The irony was almost unbearable. His parents were kicking him out for being unproductive at the exact moment when 3 years of seemingly unproductive work was about to transform into something extraordinary. But there was one more piece of the puzzle that made this situation even more complex. Something that Marcus discovered completely by accident during one of his final nights in his childhood home, while backing up his code and preparing to move his entire operation to whatever tiny apartment he could afford. Marcus needed to retrieve an old external hard drive from the basement storage room. As he searched through boxes of family memorabilia, looking for the drive, he found something that stopped him cold. Hidden behind a stack of his childhood photo albums was a folder he had never seen before. Inside were documents that revealed a secret about his father's business success. A secret that would completely reframe everything Marcus thought he knew about his family, his father's expectations, and the real reason behind that devastating ultimatum. But what Marcus found in that basement, and how it connected to everything he had been building, would prove to be the most shocking twist in a story already full of surprises. That discovery would change not just Marcus's understanding of his situation, but the entire trajectory of what Guardian Protocol could become. And it would reveal that sometimes the people who seem to understand us least might actually understand us better than we think. The countdown was ticking. Marcus had less than 24 hours to decide his future. But what he didn't know was that his future had already been decided by forces he was only beginning to understand. The tiny studio apartment that became Marcus's new home was a far cry from the comfortable suburban house where he had spent the last 3 years building his dream. Located in the industrial district of the city, sandwiched between a 24-hour laundromat and an auto repair shop, the 400-square-foot space cost him $1,200 a month. Money he didn't have, but Marcus had made his choice. On the morning of his father's deadline, he had packed his computers, his research, and what little clothing he owned into his beat-up Honda Civic and driven away from the only home he had ever known. The look on his parents' faces as he loaded his car would haunt him for months. His mother's tears, his father's stoic mask that couldn't quite hide his disappointment. What his parents didn't know was that Marcus hadn't given up on Guardian Protocol. If anything, leaving home had only intensified his determination. He was going to prove them wrong. Prove everyone wrong. Even if it killed him, the first 6 months were brutal beyond anything Marcus had imagined. To pay rent and buy food, he took a job delivering meals for a food delivery app. Ironic, considering he was developing technology that could revolutionize independent living. Yet he was barely surviving independently himself. His routine became a delicate balance of exhaustion, delivering food from 6 a.m. to 2 p.m., then coding, and developing Guardian Protocol from 3 p.m. until 2 a.m., surviving on maybe 4 hours of sleep per night. His studio apartment was transformed into a makeshift laboratory. He had rigged up a complex system of mirrors to maximize natural light, since he couldn't afford proper lighting. His dining table doubled as his desk. His bed served as additional seating during video calls with potential partners. And his tiny kitchen became a testing ground for miniaturized sensors. But despite the hardships, something magical was happening. Away from his parents' judgment and expectations, Marcus was able to focus purely on his vision. Guardian Protocol was evolving rapidly, becoming more sophisticated and elegant with each iteration. The breakthrough came during his 8th month in the apartment. Marcus had been struggling with the system's battery life. The sensors needed to operate for years without replacement. But the AI processing required significant power. The solution came to him during one of his late-night coding sessions, when his own laptop battery died and he realized he had been unconsciously optimizing his work patterns to conserve power. What if the sensors could do the same thing? What if they could learn not just about the user's patterns, but about the optimal times to process data, communicate with the network, and even enter power-saving modes? This insight led to Guardian Protocol 4.0. A system so efficient and intelligent that it could operate for up to 7 years on a single battery charge, while becoming more accurate and responsive over time. Marcus had essentially created artificial intelligence that could think like a human about energy conservation. The timing couldn't have better. The elderly care industry was facing a crisis. The COVID-19 pandemic had highlighted the vulnerability of seniors living alone, and families were desperately seeking solutions that would allow their loved ones to age in place safely. The market that investors had claimed didn't exist was not just real. It was exploding. Marcus began reaching out to potential customers directly, bypassing the traditional investor route that had failed him so many times. He started with local senior centers, offering free trials of Guardian Protocol in exchange for feedback and testimonials. The results were immediate and dramatic. Within the first month of testing, Guardian Protocol had detected and responded to 14 separate emergency situations, from falls to cardiac events to medication reactions. But more importantly, it had provided peace of mind to hundreds of families who could finally sleep at night knowing their loved ones were protected. Word spread quickly through the tight-knit community of elder care professionals. Marcus began receiving calls from nursing homes, assisted living facilities, and individual families across the country. The demand was so overwhelming that he had to create a waiting list. But there was a problem. Marcus was operating on a shoestring budget, building each system by hand in his tiny apartment. He could barely keep up with the beta testing program, let alone scale to meet the actual demand. He needed capital, significant capital, to manufacture Guardian Protocol at scale and build the infrastructure necessary to support a national rollout. This is where the story takes a turn that nobody, including Marcus, could have predicted. It was a Tuesday evening in February, almost exactly 2 years after Marcus had been kicked out of his parents' house. He was working late, as usual. When his phone rang. The number was blocked, which was unusual. Marcus had learned to be cautious about unknown calls, as he had been receiving increasing interest from competitors trying to learn about his technology. Double quotes. Hello. Is this Marcus Chun? The voice was professional. Crisp, with just a hint of an accent Marcus couldn't place. Yes. Who is this? My name is Dr. Sarah Martinez, and I represent a private investment group that has been following your work on Guardian Protocol. We'd like to discuss a potential partnership. Marcus's heart sank. He had been down this road so many times before. Investors who promised the world, but ultimately wanted to completely change his vision or take control of his company. I appreciate the interest. De Martinez. But I'm not currently seeking investment partners. I understand your reluctance, Mr. Chun, but I think you'll find our proposal quite different from anything you've encountered before. We're not interested in changing Guardian Protocol. We want to accelerate it exactly as you've envisioned it. Something in her tone made Marcus pause. What kind of investment group are you? We represent individuals who have seen the impact of Guardian Protocol firsthand. Our lead investor's mother was one of your beta testers last month. Your system detected her stroke and coordinated emergency response so quickly that she made a full recovery. Without Guardian Protocol, she would have died alone in her apartment. Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. He remembered that case, Mrs. Eleanor Blackwood, an 82-year-old retired teacher who lived alone in a downtown apartment. The system had detected subtle changes in her movement patterns and speech when she called out to her cat, recognizing the early signs of a stroke. Guardian Protocol had simultaneously alerted her daughter, her physician, and emergency CRVIC, providing them with real-time updates on her condition. The paramedics had arrived within 4 minutes and administered stroke medication within the critical window. Mrs. Blackwood is your investor's mother? She is, and when her son learned about the technology that saved his mother's life, he became very interested in ensuring that Guardian Protocol reaches every person who needs it. Dr. Martinez continued. We'd like to meet with you to discuss our proposal. But I should warn you, what we're offering comes with some unusual conditions. Marcus was intrigued despite himself. What kind of conditions? We'll discuss that in person. Are you available to meet tomorrow evening? Every instinct Marcus had developed over the past 2 years told him to be cautious. But something about this felt different. The fact that they knew specific details about his beta testing program, that they understood the real impact of his technology, suggested this wasn't just another venture capital firm looking for a quick return. Where did you want to meet? Actually, we'd prefer to meet at your apartment, if that's acceptable. We have some materials we'd like to show you that require privacy. The request was unusual, but Marcus had been working out of his apartment for so long that it had become his de facto office anyway. Tomorrow at 7 p.m. works for me. Excellent. And Mr. Chun? I think you're going to find our proposal very interesting. Marcus spent the next day in a state of nervous anticipation. He tried to focus on his usual work. He was testing a new algorithm that could predict medical emergencies up to 72 hours before they occurred. But his mind kept wandering to the mysterious phone call. That evening, at exactly 7 p.m., there was a knock on his door. Marcus opened it to find Dr. Martinez, a woman in her 40s with kind eyes and a warm smile, accompanied by a man who looked to be in his 60s, impeccably dressed in a suit that probably cost more than Marcus's monthly rent. Mr. Chun. I'm Dr. Martinez. And this is James Blackwood. Marcus shook hands with both of them, noting that James Blackwood's grip was firm, but his eyes were slightly emotional. Mr. Chun. Double quotes, James said. I wanted to thank you personally for what you did for my mother. Guardian Protocol didn't just save her life. It gave our entire family peace of mind that we didn't even know we were missing. They settled into Marcus's small living space. Which suddenly felt even more cramped with visitors. Dr. Martinez opened a leather briefcase and pulled out a folder of documents. Double quotes Marcus. We've been tracking Guardian Protocol's development and testing for the past 6 months. We know about your beta testing results, your manufacturing challenges. And your customer waiting list. We also know that you're operating on a budget that doesn't allow you to scale to meet the demand you're seeing. Marcus nodded, unsure where this was heading. We'd like to solve that problem, double quotes James continued. We're prepared to offer you $50 million in funding to accelerate Guardian Protocol's national rollout. Marcus nearly choked on his coffee. $50 million was more money than he had ever imagined. Enough to not just solve his scaling problems, but to build Guardian Protocol into the comprehensive eldercare technology platform he had always envisioned. But Dr. Martinez continued. Our offer comes with 3 specific conditions that you need to understand before you make any decisions. What conditions? First, we want Guardian Protocol to remain exactly as you've designed it. We're not interested in changing your vision or taking control of your company. You would retain full operational control and majority ownership. That was unusual. Most investors wanted significant control in exchange for their capital. Double quote second. We want to accelerate your timeline significantly. Instead of a gradual rollout over several years, we want Guardian Protocol available nationwide within 18 months. Marcus's mind raced. That timeline was aggressive. But with $50 million. It might be possible. And the third condition? Dr. Martinez and James exchanged a look that Marcus couldn't quite interpret. The third condition is the most unusual, and it's the one that might be difficult for you to accept. Double quotes Dr. Martinez said carefully. We want you to acquire your father's logistics company as part of Guardian Protocol's expansion strategy. Marcus felt like the room had suddenly tilted. What? Your father's company. Chen Logistics. Has exactly the distribution network and supply chain management expertise that Guardian Protocol needs to scale nationally. More importantly, your father has connections throughout the business community that could accelerate Guardian Protocol's adoption. But my father, he doesn't even know what Guardian Protocol is. He thinks I'm a failure. James leaned forward. Marcus. We've done our research on your family situation. We know about the ultimatum. About your parents' disappointment. About the way you left home. But we also know something you might not realize. What? Your father has been following your progress. He knows about Guardian Protocol. He knows about your beta testing success. And he knows about the impact you're having on people's lives. Marcus felt like he was in a dream. Nothing about this conversation made sense. How could he know? We haven't spoken in 2 years. Dr. Martinez smiled gently. Marcus, who do you think told us about you in the first place? The words hit Marcus like a physical blow. He stared at the 2 people sitting in his tiny apartment, trying to process what he had just heard. You're saying my father is behind this investment. Not exactly. James clarified. Your father isn't our investor, but he's the one who brought Guardian Protocol to our attention. He's been quietly promoting your technology within his business network, telling people about what his son has accomplished. Marcus felt tears forming in his eyes, but he kicked me out. He said I was a failure. Marcus. Dr. Martinez said gently. Sometimes the people who love us most give us exactly what we need, even when it hurts. Your father knew that as long as you were comfortable at home, you might never have the motivation to turn Guardian Protocol into everything it could become. But why the condition about acquiring his company? Because, James said, your father wants to work with you. He wants to be part of Guardian Protocol's success, but he's too proud to ask directly. And he's afraid you might reject him after everything that happened. Marcus sat in stunned silence, trying to reconcile everything he thought he knew about his relationship with his father. The acquisition wouldn't be a takeover. Double quotes. Dr. Martinez continued. It would be a merger. Your father would join Guardian Protocol as head of operations and logistics. His company would become the backbone of your distribution network, and the two of you would finally be working together toward a common goal. But what if he says, "No"? What if he doesn't want to work with me? James smiled. Marcus, your father has been waiting for this conversation for 2 years. He just didn't know how to start it. Dr. Martinez closed the folder and looked directly at Marcus. You don't have to decide tonight, but I want you to understand something. This isn't just about money or business strategy. This is about giving you the opportunity to build something incredible while healing the relationship that matters most to you. How long do I have to decide? Take a week, but Marcus... I want you to know that regardless of your decision about the acquisition, the $50 million offer stands. We believe in Guardian Protocol, and we believe in you. After they left, Marcus sat alone in his apartment, staring at the business card Dr. Martinez had left on his table. In the space of 2 hours, his entire world had shifted. He had gone from struggling to pay rent to having access to $50 million. He had gone from believing his father had given up on him to learning that his father had been secretly supporting him all along. But the most shocking realization was still to come. As Marcus processed everything he had learned, he began to understand that the condition about acquiring his father's company wasn't just about business strategy. It was about giving him the opportunity to return home, not as the failure who had been kicked out, but as the successful entrepreneur who was offering his father a partnership. The question was he ready to take that leap? The next morning, Marcus would have to decide whether to accept an offer that would change not just his business, but his entire life. And the answer he gave would determine whether Guardian Protocol would become the empire he had always envisioned, or whether this opportunity would slip away like so many others. But what Marcus didn't know yet was that this decision would lead to the most important conversation of his life. A conversation that would reveal the truth about everything that had happened between him and his father, and set the stage for a confrontation that would determine the future of both their lives. Marcus spent 7 sleepless nights wrestling with the most important decision of his life. The business card from Dr. Martinez sat on his kitchen table like a ticking time bomb, representing not just $50 million, but the possibility of reconciling with the father who had shaped him through rejection. For 7 days, he analyzed every angle, every potential outcome, every way this could go wrong. But in the end, the decision came down to a simple truth. Guardian Protocol was bigger than his personal pain. If acquiring his father's company could help him save more lives, protect more families, and fulfill the vision that had consumed him for 3 years. Then he had to try. On the 8th day, Marcus called Dr. Martinez and accepted the offer. All of it, including the condition about his father's company. What followed was the most intense month of Marcus's life. The $50 million wasn't just handed over. It came with a comprehensive business plan that required Marcus to transform from a solo inventor into a CEO capable of managing a national expansion. Dr. Martinez connected him with a team of experts, manufacturing specialists, supply chain managers, regulatory consultants, and marketing professionals who understood the eldercare industry. Guardian Protocol underwent its most rigorous testing yet. Independent laboratories verified its effectiveness, regulatory bodies approved its safety protocols, and pilot programs in 12 cities demonstrated its commercial viability. The results were staggering. 99.3% accuracy in emergency detection, average response time reduced by 67%, and customer satisfaction ratings that exceeded anything in the eldercare technology space. But the real test wasn't technical. It was personal. Marcus had to prepare for a conversation with his father that would determine whether this incredible opportunity would heal their relationship or destroy it forever. Dr. Martinez had arranged the meeting. but she had been deliberately vague about the details. Your father knows you're coming. She had said, he knows about the acquisition offer, but he doesn't know you're the one making it. Marcus chose to approach this moment with the same methodical precision he had applied to developing Guardian Protocol. He studied his father's company, learning everything about Chun Logistics operations, client base, financial position, and strategic challenges. What he discovered surprised him. His father's business, while successful, was facing the same pressures that were reshaping the entire logistics industry. E-commerce giants were squeezing profit margins. Automation was threatening traditional operations, and younger competitors were leveraging technology that Chun Logistics hadn't adopted. The company that had seemed so stable and successful during Marcus's childhood was actually at a crossroads. More importantly, Marcus realized that Guardian Protocol's needs aligned perfectly with Chun Logistics' capabilities. His father's company had relationships with medical supply distributors, experience with time-sensitive deliveries, and expertise in managing complex supply chains. Exactly what Guardian Protocol needed to scale nationally. The acquisition wasn't just about reconciliation. It was brilliant business strategy. The meeting was scheduled for a Friday afternoon at Chun Logistics headquarters, the same building where Marcus had visited his father as a child, the place where he had first learned about business and ambition. As Marcus pulled into the parking lot in his newly purchased Tesla Model S, his first major purchase with his new funding, he felt the weight of 3 years collapsing into this single moment. The receptionist, who didn't recognize the grown man Marcus had become, directed him to the conference room on the 3rd floor. "Mr. Chun is expecting you," she said with professional courtesy. Marcus rode the elevator to the 3rd floor, his heart pounding with a mixture of anticipation and terror. In a few minutes, he would either achieve the most satisfying vindication of his life or suffer the most devastating rejection he could imagine. The conference room was exactly as Marcus remembered it from his childhood visits. A large oval table surrounded by leather chairs, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, and walls lined with awards and photos documenting Chun Logistics' 30-year history. But now Marcus was seeing it through different eyes, evaluating it as a potential acquisition target rather than his father's intimidating workspace. At exactly 3 p.m. The door opened, and Robert Chun walked in. Marcus had imagined this moment countless times, but the reality was more emotional than he had prepared for. His father looked older, grayer around the temples, with new lines around his eyes that suggested the past 3 years hadn't been easy for him either. But his posture was still straight, his presence still commanding, his expression still unreadable. For a moment, father and son simply looked at each other across the conference room table. 3 years of silence, disappointment, and misunderstanding hung in the air between them. "Marcus," Robert's voice was carefully neutral. "Giving away nothing, Dad." Robert moved to the head of the table and gestured for Marcus to sit across from him. The symbolism wasn't lost on either of them. This was a business meeting first, a family reunion second. "Dr. Martinez told me you had a business proposal to discuss. Double quotes, Robert said, settling into his chair with the practiced ease of 30 years of negotiations. Marcus had rehearsed this conversation 100 times. But now, facing his father across the table where so many important business decisions had been made, he felt all his preparation crumble away. "I do. Marcus began. His voice steadier than he felt. "I'm here to make an offer to acquire Chun Logistics." Robert's expression didn't change, but Marcus caught a flicker of something. Surprise. Perhaps. Or curiosity in his father's eyes. "I see. And what company are you representing?" This was the moment Marcus had been both dreading and anticipating. I'm representing Guardian Protocol Technologies. I'm the CEO and founder. Now Robert's composure cracked slightly. His eyebrows raised almost imperceptibly, and he leaned back in his chair. Guardian Protocol, double quotes, Robert repeated slowly. The company that's been making headlines in the eldercare industry. Marcus felt a jolt of shock. You know about Guardian Protocol? Son, I've known about Guardian Protocol since your first beta test. Did you think I wouldn't research what my son was actually working on after you left home? The admission hit Marcus like a physical blow. You knew? This whole time. You knew what I was building? Robert's mask finally slipped, revealing something Marcus had never seen before. Pride mixed with regret. Marcus, I knew about your beta testing program 6 months after you moved out. I knew about your first customer testimonials, your partnership with senior living facilities, your waiting list. I knew about every major milestone in Guardian Protocol's development. Marcus felt tears threatening at the corners of his eyes. But you never said anything. You never. You let me think you still believed I was a failure. Robert stood up slowly and walked to the window, looking out at the city where his son had been struggling and succeeding in equal measure. Do you want to know the hardest thing about being a parent, Marcus? Sometimes you have to let your children hate you so they can become who they're meant to be. The words hung in the air like a confession. Robert turned back to face his son. That day when I gave you the ultimatum, when I kicked you out of the house, do you know what I saw in your room? Marcus shook his head, not trusting his voice. I saw genius. I saw innovation. I saw something that could change the world. But I also saw comfort. I saw safety. I saw someone who was brilliant. Enough to build something incredible, but comfortable enough to never take the risks necessary to make it happen. Robert returned to his seat, his eyes never leaving Marcus's face. You needed pressure, son. You needed desperation. You needed to believe that your back was against the wall and that Guardian Protocol wasn't just a hobby anymore. It was your survival. Marcus felt everything he thought he knew about the past 3 years shifting beneath him. You're saying you kicked me out on purpose? To motivate me? I'm saying I made the hardest decision a father can make. I chose to be the villain in your story so you could become the hero in everyone else's. Robert reached into his briefcase and pulled out a thick folder. Inside were printouts of articles about Guardian Protocol, testimonials from beta testers, financial projections, and technical specifications. I've been following your company's progress more closely than any investment analyst. I know your customer acquisition costs, your manufacturing challenges, your regulatory approvals. I know that Guardian Protocol is exactly what the market needs, and that you're exactly the person to deliver it. Marcus stared at the folder, overwhelmed by the evidence of his father's secret attention and approval. But why didn't you tell me? Why didn't you let me know you were proud of what I was building? Robert's voice became softer, more vulnerable than Marcus had ever heard it. Because I was afraid that, if you knew I approved, you might start building Guardian Protocol to impress me instead of building it to change the world. And Marcus, what you've created is too important to be about impressing anyone. The emotional weight of 3 years of misunderstanding crashed over Marcus all at once. He had spent so long believing his father saw him as a failure that he had never considered the possibility that his father's rejection had been an act of faith rather than disappointment. So when Dr. Martinez approached you about the acquisition, I told her that the only way I would consider it was if the acquiring company understood Guardian Protocol's mission well enough to preserve it. When she told me the acquiring company was Guardian Protocol itself, and that you were the one making the offer, Marcus, it was the proudest moment of my life. Robert stood up again. But this time he moved around the table toward his son. You're not here to acquire my company, son. You're here to offer me the privilege of being part of something you built from nothing. Something that's going to help millions of people live better, safer lives. Marcus rose to meet his father. And for the first time in 3 years, they embraced. But this wasn't the end of the story. It was the beginning of the most remarkable business partnership either of them could have imagined. Over the next hour, father and son worked through the details of the acquisition with the efficiency of two people who understood each other perfectly. Robert would join Guardian Protocol as Chief Operating Officer, bringing with him not just his company's infrastructure, but 30 years of business wisdom and connections that would accelerate Guardian Protocol's growth exponentially. Chun Logistics would become Guardian Protocol Logistics, the distribution backbone of a technology that would eventually protect over 10 million elderly Americans living independently. The company that Robert had built would find new purpose as the delivery system for his son's vision of transforming elder care. But perhaps most importantly, Marcus and Robert would finally be working together toward a common goal, each contributing their unique strengths to something bigger than either could achieve alone. As they finalized the terms of the merger, Robert made one final confession. Marcus, there's something else you should know. That first investment from Dr. Martinez's group, I helped arrange that. Marcus looked up from the contracts, startled. Mrs. Blackwood is a real person. And Guardian Protocol did save her life, but her son James isn't just an investor. He's been my business partner for 15 years. When I told him about what you had built, he insisted on meeting you and supporting Guardian Protocol's growth. The final piece of the puzzle fell into place. Marcus realized that his father hadn't just been watching his progress from afar. He had been quietly orchestrating the support Marcus needed to succeed. You've been helping me this whole time, Marcus said, the full scope of his father's involvement finally becoming clear. I've been giving you the space to help yourself. Robert corrected. Everything you've accomplished. Every breakthrough. Every success. That was all you. Marcus. I just made sure you had the resources to reach your potential. 1 year later, Guardian Protocol would go public in the largest IPO in eldercare technology history. Valued at $2.3 billion, Marcus would appear on the cover of Time magazine as one of the 35 under 35 innovators changing the world. Robert would be named Executive of the Year by Logistics Management magazine for his role in scaling Guardian Protocol's distribution network. But more importantly, Guardian Protocol would be protecting over 3 million elderly Americans, detecting emergencies, coordinating care, and giving families the peace of mind that comes from knowing they're loved. Ones are never truly alone. The young man who had been kicked out of his parents' house for being a lazy dreamer had become the CEO of a company that was literally saving lives every day. The father who had seemed unsupportive and demanding had revealed himself to be the most strategic supporter his son could have asked for, and the story that had begun with a devastating rejection had become the ultimate example of how sometimes the greatest gift a parent can give their child is the motivation to prove them wrong. What can we learn from Marcus's incredible journey in our society? We often mistake motion for progress and busyness for productivity. Marcus appeared lazy to everyone around him, but he was actually working harder than anyone knew, just on something so far ahead of its time that others couldn't recognize its value. How many of us have dismissed someone's dreams as unrealistic? How many parents have pushed their children towards safe careers instead of supporting their passion projects? How many innovators have we overlooked because their work didn't fit our definition of traditional success? Marcus's story reminds us that true innovation often looks like failure to outside observers. The next world-changing technology might be developing right now in someone's bedroom. dismissed by everyone around them as just playing with computers. If this story inspired you, I want to challenge you to do 3 things. First, think about someone in your life whose dreams you might have dismissed. Maybe it's time to ask them what they're really working on and how you can support them. Second, if you're working on something that others don't understand, remember that the most valuable innovations are often the ones that seem impossible until they're inevitable. Don't let other people's inability to see your vision stop you from building it. In third, smash that like button if this story changed how you think about success and failure. Subscribe to the channel for more incredible real-life stories of triumph against the odds. And share this video with someone who needs to hear that their impossible dream might be closer to reality than they think, because sometimes the best revenge isn't just proving people wrong. It's proving them wrong while changing the world in the process. What's your guardian protocol? What are you building that nobody else understands yet? Let me know in the comments below.